Welcome to The Debate. Today we are looking at the landscape of resilience in Arundhati Roy's The Ministry of Utmost Happiness. And we're really dissecting a brutal tension that's presented in the text. The conflict between the dunya, that's the Urdu word for the world, representing, the sane, the successful, the modern, and the margins of society, which are represented specifically by a graveyard and even a dung beetle.
It is a striking juxtaposition. The central question the material really forces on us is about the location of hope. Is true resilience found in the shining modern project that promises order and progress? Or, as Roy seems to suggest, must we look to the discarded waste and the broken places to find a real future?
I'm going to argue that the dunya is a facade. It's described in the text as a theater of war, and that true resilience, true inclusion can only be found in the margins, specifically in the graveyard, and from the perspective of the outcast.
And I come at it from a different angle. While that critique of modernity is powerful and valid, elevating the rubble and the graveyard to the status of paradise, it risks romanticizing suffering. It offers a survival strategy, sure, but I'm not sure it offers a structural solution.
Well, let's look at the dunya first. The source material paints this shining modern project not as a utopia, but as a place defined by political volatility and what Roy calls the gentrification of the soul. We're given these images of five-star hotels where turbaned doormen offer manufactured smiles to foreign guests. It creates a binary world, policed by what the text calls the imams of sanity. If you don't fit the rigid criteria of this world, you are simply discarded. And that's why I champion the Jannat guest house. Jannat means paradise. And this sanctuary is built, literally on bones, in a graveyard. It's curated by Anjum, a hijra, a member of India's transgender community, whose very existence defies that rigid logic of the dunya. My thesis really is that we have to reject the impossible fiction of harmony in the modern world and embrace this Noah's Ark of the rejected.
The poetic power of Roy's imagery there, especially with Anjum, is just undeniable. But I have to push back on the practicality of the graveyard as a model for society. You describe the dunya by its exclusions, but the dunya also represents structure, infrastructure, order. The text notes that Anjum's voice sounds like two voices quarreling with each other. Now, that's a powerful metaphor for internal conflict, sure. But is a space where the living and the dead coexist actually a blueprint for a future? Or is it merely a refuge for those who have absolutely no other choice? My concern is that identifying paradise as a place of death and waste is a deeply pessimistic concession. It suggests the heavens are inevitably falling, rather than, urging us to try and keep them up.
But the text implies the heavens have already fallen for these characters. The Jannat guest house succeeds where the city fails because its only criterion for entry is burying those whom the imams of the dunya rejected. It creates a space where boundaries of faith, of gender, are porous. In the dunya, identity is a cage. In the graveyard, under Anjum's care, it's fluid. It is the only truly inclusive space mentioned in the material.
Okay, but let's look at that strictly. It's inclusive, yes, but it is defined by death. The text explicitly states, this sanctuary is built on bones. Is that sustainable? Should society really emulate a space that functions essentially as a necropolis? You're arguing for a model of society that is a kind of funeral service for the living.
I would frame it differently. The argument here is that the dunya is actually the place of death. Look at the evidence in the text. The shining missiles, the manufactured smiles, the bottled rivers. These are sterile things that are masquerading as life. The graveyard, paradoxically, is described as the most vibrant space for the living. It's a place of connection, of protection, whereas the dunya is a place of performance and exclusion.
There is a certain irony there, but this brings us to the other major symbol in the text, the dung beetle, Gihokham. You see this creature as a beacon of hope.
Absolutely. The dung beetle is the ultimate symbol of hope in this narrative. The text describes it as a creature that sustains life by feeding on waste. It takes the rubble of political and ecological failure and rolls it into sustenance for the next generation. At the very end of the novel, the beetle is described lying on its back to save the world in case the heavens fell.
I just don't buy that as a hopeful image. It is visually striking, yes, but think about what it's asking of people. Expecting human beings to inhabit waste like beetles, rolling the debris of civilization into a ball just to survive? That is a grim, grim standard for hope. It suggests that we should just accept the rubble as our natural habitat.
I think you're missing the emotional core of that metaphor, though. The text describes this not as resignation, but as stubborn, ecstatic love. It's about the duty to be present. When the Shining Project collapses, which the text strongly suggests it is doing, the beetle represents the resilience to just keep going. It represents a duty that takes the wreckage and turns it into life.
But does that duty transcend logic, as the text says, precisely because it lacks a logical path to structural repair? Waiting for the sunrise while lying in the rubble. It's a powerful spiritual stance, I get that. But it implies that we can't actually stop the heavens from falling. We can only catch them. It feels like a defense mechanism, not a solution.
Well, perhaps defense is the only honest solution left in the context of the novel. And this ties directly into the ecofeminist critique the material presents. We see the cost of the Duniya's version of progress. The text highlights the demise of old birds, the vultures, poisoned by diclofenac, a chemical used to force cows to produce more milk.
The collapse of natural systems is a clear indictment in the text, certainly.
Right, but it goes further. The material links this exploitation of nature directly to the oppression of women and others. We have the image of a cow that burst from eating plastic bags and a pharmaceutical lab beagle that looked just erased. In a system where animals are machines and people are disposable, Anjum's sanctuary for injured animals and broken people becomes a revolutionary act. It's a refusal to treat life as a commodity.
I concede the brutality of that unethical modernization. That image of the erased beagle it's haunting. However, I would argue against conflating all progress with the poisoning of the world. There's a tension here between wanting to save the old birds and the need for modern sustenance. The Dunya is flawed, deeply so, but Anjum's retreat doesn't stop the production of plastic bags. It just provides a place to die because of them.
But it also provides a new way to live. And this external war against nature, it mirrors the internal wars the characters face. The text cites the character Nemo, who says, "The war is inside us. Indo-Pak is inside us."
Meaning the conflict between India and Pakistan isn't just a border dispute, it's psychological.
Exactly. And the application is right there in Anjum's body. She is an intersex person, a dual being, where genders wage war, mirroring the partition. The text argues that the solution isn't erasure of difference, or, choosing one side over the other, but slowly becoming everything. It's an expansion of identity to include the conflict, rather than trying to purify it.
Becoming everything is a beautiful spiritual goal. But in a world of shining missiles, as the text keeps reminding us, it's very difficult to operationalize. And the text itself notes that this internal war will never settle down. That suggests a permanent state of internal unrest. It implies that peace, at least in the traditional sense, is impossible. That is a heavy burden to place on the individual.
It is a burden, but the source material suggests it's the only way to be real. So, to summarize my position, the text demands that we be brave enough to build our homes on the literal bones of what society rejects. We have to look to Miss Udaya Jabin, whose name means sunrise. She's the child of the resistance, raised by a family of 6 fathers and 3 mothers in that graveyard. She represents a chosen paradise, not one inherited from the corrupt Dunya.
And to summarize my view, while the Dunya is exposed as a theater of war, retreating to the graveyard is a radical act of survival, not necessarily a blueprint for a functioning civilization. We have to be careful not to romanticize the rubble or the necessity of living like that dung beetle. It's a testament to human endurance, of course, but it's a tragedy that such endurance is required in the first place.
And yet, the endurance is undeniable. We are left with that final haunting image from the text, the murdered man found with his fists full of earth and yellow mustard flowers.
A sign that the earth refuses to discard what the Dunya has murdered.
The question remains for us, Are we willing to stand guard over the rubble like that dung beetle and wait for the sunrise? Or can we find a way to stop the sky